This is my first stream in my office. I did my makeup stream earlier. If you missed that, you didn't miss much. I was in my bathroom. It was awkward. But I have switched out my phone for an actual camcorder. Hopefully the quality isn't too bad. It was cheap. I don't know what I'm doing with tech most of the time. But hopefully this works out. Before I want to dive into film, because I'm really excited to finally have a place to talk about it, I just wanted to show off the palette that I was telling you earlier was coming for me in the mail. It is the Urban Decay tie-in to Marvel's Eternals, a movie I have never seen nor have any intention of seeing. I'm not a Marvel fan. But this is the most extra eyeshadow palette I think I have ever come across. So it's basically like a book when it's closed, and then you open it, and it's a pop-up. It's just ridiculous. And then you have to like dig into another layer to actually get to the eyeshadow. And I mean, these colors are pretty. I have my camera's settings so that it's a little bit lighter because I'm in a darker room, so you can't really see the colors properly. It's not saturated like that, but yeah. I honestly can't wait to try it out, but I just opened it. I'm like, this is super heavy in the packaging. And I opened it. I'm like, oh my god. This is like a Criterion Blu-ray. So, yes. Again, I'm Obsessive Filma on Twitter. My name is Alexandra. Let's just see if I can... There we go. I am a film student. I'm training to be a film historian and scholar. I have a huge passion for film. Mostly I hang out in the pre-code era, old Hollywood. I was raised by parents who were like TCM addicts. Like, one of my earliest career goals was to be a PhD. Both my parents are academics, and I call it entering into the family business. And the thing is, like, the thing about academic families, like, a lot of the time, if the parents are, you know, not so full of themselves, or, like, they actually understand that this is not a prestige thing, like, my parents tried like hell to dissuade me from going into academia. Like, at the age of 8, I already knew I wanted to be a professor of something. And they spent the next, like, 15, 20 years basically saying, like, no, honey, you don't want to do this. Like, please, you have so many other prospects. Like, you could do anything you want to. Reach for the stars. You're a millennial. And, you know, reality hasn't bitch slapped you upside the head yet, so you can still think that you can be anything you want to be. And I was just like, no, I want to be an academic. And then I hit my teens, and, like, through my teens and, like, towards my mid to late 20s, I was like, oh, maybe I want to be, like, a nurse, maybe I want to be a psychologist, like, maybe I want to be a literature professor or something. Like, I still really wanted to go into academia, but I was also like, well, maybe I'll just do industry. I actually didn't really care for film as much until I was about 27. Before that, it was just, like, entertainment to me. Like, I liked movies in the way that most people like movies. Like, you know, it's an hour and a half where you're just kind of looking at the fun pictures on the screen, and you don't really think that much about it, and eat your popcorn, laugh with your friends. But at one point, I can't remember which movie it was, but suddenly it just kind of, something clicked in my head. And from that day on, like, I have always been intellectually curious, but from that day on, like, I devoured everything that I could find out about movies. Like, movie history I was interested in, like, and watching TCM as a kid, that kind of, you know, really stoked my interest once I came around to the idea of movies. So, like, if you haven't seen TCM, first of all, why the fuck not? It's amazing. But also, like, they will have, in front of the featured films, they will have one of the hosts come and talk to you a little bit about the context of the film, like, the time period it was made in, the actors, the directors, like, what kind of motivated the film making itself and how it impacted us, like as a society afterward. And so I kind of knew what to look for, I guess. So I got addicted to TV tropes, which, another thing I can't recommend enough, like, fair warning though, if you have anything that you have to do, like a time commitment, try not to go on TV tropes ahead of time, because you will get, like, deep in. There are rabbit holes upon rabbit holes. It's like the only thing that I have on my my phone and my Google Chrome tabs, because I'm just like constantly like doing the wiki walk from other pages, and yeah. So anyway, I started thinking critically about film, and the way that I have explained to people who are like, why the hell would you want to be a film historian? I read films kind of like people read books. So like, it's not just what you see on the surface level, it is also cultural context, it is also the subtext, it is also what's going on in society at the time in this geographic location. And it's endlessly fascinating to me. Both my parents are historians, by the way. They're useful historians in that kind of sense. My dad is an American labor historian, which is funny because he is also born and bred English, but he teaches American history of the 20th century and stuff like that, so, you know, that's marketable. My mom was a Russian historian, she still is, but she's also, she branches out to European history and American history as well, so again, marketable. But I am difficult. And I chose this concentration because I have just such a passion for it, and even if, like, I end up at a pokey-ass liberal arts college in the middle of nowhere for film students, like, I want to teach the next generation and maybe reach somebody who was like me and they didn't really understand, like, what they wanted their purpose in life to be, and just teach them that they can have a passion and that they should go for it. Like, sod everything else. You don't really go into academia for the money anyway, but, you know, for me, I want to be comfortable, but I also want to do something that I love, and I absolutely love talking about film. I love learning about film. Like, I will never stop learning about it. You don't really have a threshold where you reach it and you're like the film authority on the matter. Like, there's always something new, even if you've seen a movie a billion times, that you can find. So yeah, I don't stream often at all. This is actually, today is the first day I have ever been on camera. Usually when I'm playing games and streaming, I just have my headset on, I don't have a camera pointing at me. I'm actually very, like, self-conscious and insecure about my own looks and my weight, so for the longest time I was like, nah, nobody wants to see this. But, I just kind of decided today that I'm gonna go for it. I watch a lot of video essays, so I was considering doing, like, a YouTube channel for a while, but then I was like, I'm gonna go on Twitch, because I've already used it. I have 10 followers, I'm sure at least one of them will show up today. And, it's also, like, easier, I guess, because I won't be constantly checking to see if, like, someone's watched it, because it's pretty much real time, and I'm sick of having to keep this stuff to myself. There is nobody in my life right now who I can, like, monologue about film to. And I don't have to worry about making it, like, super jazzy and interesting on Twitch. I don't have to have the backgrounds or the music. So hopefully like-minded people can come in and we can chat about movies. I love discussing them. I love hearing from other people about their perspectives on movies. It's actually one of my favorite things, when I'm like, hey, you know, I watched The Batman and I don't really understand the hype, this is what I got from it, and then someone tells me, no, you are absolutely wrong, like, how could you? And then explains, like, why they think I'm wrong. Not in, like, a rude way, because it's like, what the fuck? But for somebody to actually, like, tell me, in a way that is, like, in a way that they see the world and how it has colored their experience with the Batman. Like, I am all for that. I want to be told I'm wrong and have that backed up and just kind of exchange ideas. So on YouTube, like, you can't really do that. Comment sections are cancerous, and yeah. I told the people who were for my makeup stream this morning, I'm running on 2 hours of sleep, and this is my second huge thing of coffee today with espresso in it. I had some things I needed to get done today. So if I'm kind of all over the place and disjointed and a little bit like, yoo-hoo, that's why. I go through insomnia cycles 2 or 3 times a year, and it's always a pain in the ass, but it'll work itself out. So anyway, if you are not already and you are a film person, I can't recommend Letterboxd enough. I'm actually looking at my profile right now so that I can kind of have a stepping stone to talk about movies that I'm very passionate about. But yeah, it's gonna sound like I'm shilling right here, and I totally am for free. I love Letterboxd. Like, it's, when you watch a lot of movies like I do, it's hard to keep track of what you see. Like, especially since I go through horror movies like you would not believe, and you kind of get to a point where you're just like, oh, this title sounds familiar, I'm not sure if I've seen this one or not, and so with Letterboxd, you log what you saw, and you can give it, you know, a star rating out of 5, and I always check to make sure if I see something that sounds familiar, and I'm like, oh yeah, that one, I saw it in March, and it was fucking awful. So I don't have to suffer through it again. My throat's a little scratchy, sorry. But yeah, like, keeping track of that stuff is really cool, and they also have, like, analytics that they show you. You can look at your year in review, see how many movies you've seen, like, in the last year or in the last 5 years. You can see, like, the geographic location. So, like, movies from North America, movies from, you know, South Asia, all that stuff. They sort it out by decades. Like, it's really cool. But yeah, I definitely recommend it, and I tend to, like, you can write reviews on it, but I tend not to because I have a tendency, you may be surprised to hear this, but I have a tendency to ramble on, and, you know, people don't really want that when they're going to see if, like, they should go and see Sing 2 or whatever. They don't really want to treat us on it. They just, like, you know, less than one paragraph, snappy, like, this movie is great, I guess, or this movie is trash and I'm going to tell you in a funny way, give me likes. So, after my 3rd or 4th, like, thesis about a classic movie, I was like, alright, well, maybe I should, just kind of stick to the bare bones. For me, that is 2 paragraphs. So yeah, I've been looking for a place to kind of go into deep dives about certain types of media, and at first I was like, maybe I'll try Tumblr, but it's I don't really know. I have a lot of insecurities about my own, like, I kind of feel like no one gives a shit if I want to talk about something that I'm very enthusiastic about. I love my parents very much, and they love me, but if I start to kind of, you know, get excited and talk to them about something like Apocalypse Now and how, you know, Heart of Darkness was, you know, a very, like, it was a very profound piece of literature, but it made more so, and yada yada, and their eyes just kind of glaze over, and you can just see in their faces, like, oh god, all right, well, clear the next hour of our calendar, I guess. Here she goes. So, I just tend not to, like, voice the things that I think or that I have to say or that, like, I want to kind of discuss. So, doing it in text form was kind of, like, intimidating, I guess, and I don't like social media specifically because you're constantly, like, hyper aware of if you're getting engagement or not, and there's that tendency to kind of value yourself based on likes or based on, you know, how many people have even looked at it, how many people are responding. Like, it's ridiculous. I stay away from social media as a whole. I have Twitter because I like to network with people, and I take breaks from it. Like, I can't do that. But yeah, so I'm automatically, like, uncomfortable with social media as it is. So the Tumblr thing didn't really work out. I don't want to make video essays on YouTube because that is in itself, like, an issue, because female content creators who are talking about societal issues or talking about, like, traditionally male niche subjects like film, like, they're not treated very well on YouTube. So my feelings will get hurt. I don't want my feelings to get hurt. I try to avoid it. I have borderline personality disorder. I hurt my own feelings at least 3 times before breakfast, and I don't really need help with it. So, anyway, to the point of this, I want to talk about Nightmare Alley first. Nightmare Alley is, if you didn't know, because a lot of people, like, the advertising campaigns were absolutely, like, this movie needed to be promoted way more, and it deserved to be promoted way more. But Nightmare Alley just came out last year. It's an adaptation of a book from 1941, I want to say. It was kind of like this hard-boiled sort of, like, film, or, well, it's film noir in film. I don't know really what the literary genre is, but it's kind of like the, you know, Dashiell Hammett and all of that stuff, sort of pre-post-war cynicism, and there was an adaptation before this. It was made in 1947. It stars Tyrone Power, who is my mom's celebrity crush, and dude was just a straight fox. Like, no lie. Like, Bradley Cooper wish. But that one was basically, like, it was the end of Tyrone Power's career, which is a real pity. Because he was so handsome, he was the leading man in all of the romantic movies, and he was so sick of it. Like, I don't blame him. What kind of, you know, person who has actual, like, talent and who actually, like, cares about their craft, you don't want to be shoeboxed in. And he hated that he was handsome because that was what was happening to him. So he lobbied hard for Nightmare Alley. He was the one who actually convinced the studio, which I can't remember which studio it was at the moment, one of the big 4, the studio to acquire the rights to this book. And it was his passion project. It tanked at the box office. Everyone hated seeing Tyrone Power as not the handsome hero, but we'll get into spoilers a little later. I'm just giving some background, but yeah, it basically sent him into depression. He drank himself to death in his 30s, I want to say. And oddly enough, with the 2021 adaptation by Guillermo del Toro, a lot of that was replicated, except for, you know, Bradley Cooper still has a career. Guillermo del Toro will always have a career because the man is a masterpiece and a national treasure in every nation. But it tanked at the box office. It was barely kind of acknowledged. I mean, it deserves way more Academy Award nominations than it really got. The Green Knight deserved any of the Academy Award nominations, because holy shit, that movie. That's a whole rant in itself, but it got snubbed, and I am still sore about that. But Nightmare Alley, it was kind of just, I guess, audiences didn't really like it, and critics who really did like it, they were sort of, you know, there's that sense of elitism, I guess, especially in movie fandom versus, like, the movie, like, not industry, but, like, the critic circles and the cinephiles and the aficionados. Like, there's this kind of feeling of animosity on both sides because the critics and all of them are the snobs and the elites, and the audiences are the unwashed masses who are just constantly mindlessly consuming, like, Marvel movies, and they think the Transformers series is the greatest thing ever. And it's just stupid stereotypes on both ends. But audiences hated it, critics loved it, it tanked. No one went to see it. It released on HBO Max, like a month later? And I was the only person I knew who was excited about that. I went to see it in theaters, actually, and I was just blown away. But it's a box office bomb, and you know, it's definitely a blow to Del Toro's career. He's been on a winning streak since Kronos, which came out in the 90s, and it was a Spanish language film. It was before The Devil's Backbone, which I consider to be kind of his first step on his meteoric rise. Pan's Labyrinth, I think, is the absolute crown jewel of his career. It was one of the greatest movies I have ever seen. I have seen thousands upon thousands of movies, dude, but that film is just, I think it is one of the greatest films ever made. He followed that up with The Shape of Water, and, you know, we know, like, about Hellboy and stuff. Like, those are visually stunning movies. I mean, Hellboy 2 was sad and could have been done better, but the first one and just the look of it, like, it's very clear that Del Toro has made a movie just by looking at the set dressings and everything. Like, he's awesome. But yeah, it's real blow, especially after he won the Oscar for The Shape of Water. And, I mean, if anyone's going to win an Oscar for showing full-on fish fuck, then it's gonna be Del Toro. Sorry. But yeah, just like Tyrone Power, it was a real blemish on the careers of the people who were involved. Cate Blanchett's probably gonna be fine. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna talk about the actual movie for a second. I'm going to warn you ahead of time, there's spoilers. I'm also going to give you a content warning for domestic violence, abuse, alcoholism, some triggering misogyny stuff. Like, if you're sensitive to that sort of thing, I'm very awkward about this. I don't really know how to warn you about it. But if you haven't seen Nightmare Alley, it's a not very nice movie in terms of how women are treated, and the characters are, yeah. Anyway, so, very brief Cliff Notes version. Nightmare Alley starts with our friend Stanford. He is a mysterious drifter. In the 2021 version is what I'm talking about. The 1947 version is much different. But he's this drifter. He doesn't speak until probably 15-20 minutes into the movie. Like, he's just kind of silent for a while, but he has this mysterious past. We see him walking out of a burning farmhouse that he'd set on fire. He comes to this bus, he just rides around, and he comes across a carnival. And so he sort of, like, ambles his way in, and he's attracted to the geek show. And a geek, oh, trigger warning, animal death. A geek was a freak who would, like, be in a pit, kind of treated as subhuman, sort of the missing link sort of thing, and their whole appeal, I guess, was that they would eat literally anything, including live chickens' heads. So, yeah, the 20s were a rough time, I think. But he's very attracted to this, and he kind of sticks around after the geek show. He gets out of paying. And they sort of just kind of are like, hey, if you're looking for some work for tonight, you can help us load up and stuff. And he just kind of integrates into this carnival troupe, and he starts helping out with the Madame Zena's psychic show, and he learns the sort of tricks the carnies would do, like sleight of hand stuff, bullshitting, like, all of that stuff. He's so good at it, too. And that really would have been your first clue if you knew what was going to come next. And that's another reason why I love this movie, is, like, rewatching it, you get so much more as well. But, he's very charismatic, he's very smarmy, he's able to sell butter to, you know, a cow. Like, my metaphors are not good today, work with me. But he's very good at being a snake oil salesman. So he's kind of romantically interested in the amazing electric girl. God, what's her name? It's one of my favorite movies, and I'm just blanking right now. Hold on. Apologies. It's Rooney Mara. Alright, IMDb, please. I'm super prepared, you know. God. I just saw this not too long ago, too. Like, I am just fried. Okay. Where is she? Molly! God. Yes, he falls in love. Well, he is attracted to Molly. She is sort of naive. She's very. As sheltered as she can be, she does heavily imply, when she finally kind of gives in to Stan's charms and attempts to get into her pants, she does heavily imply that she has been sexually assaulted in the past, but it's never addressed, and he just kind of pushes that to one side so that he can, get to second or third base or whatever. And she's sort of protected by the strong man and, there's a little person. I don't want to call them dwarfs if that's not the correct parlance. I don't really know. I'm not in touch with the disability community in that way, and that's my fault. But they're very protective of her because they knew her dad, and they are basically telling her to stay away from this dude. He's bad news, and they start to beat him up when they find them together. And Molly's like, "I love him. We're gonna get married." They leave the carnival, and I've skipped over a few things, but I guess plot-wise, Madame Xena does her psychic act, but her husband or partner, Pete, who is an alcoholic, a very sad alcoholic, they used to be, like, a big, like, touring show on the vaudeville circuits. Like, he was the person who would be the mentalist, and they had a system that he'd written down in his little book, and they could sell that for, big money, but it was kind of his nest egg, his, like, retirement sort of thing. So one night after Stan decides that he was very interested in acquiring this notebook, even though Pete was kind of like, "No, you really shouldn't. Like, I don't really want you to have this, because in the wrong hands it can be, bad, and you're not ready," and all that stuff. So it's kind of ambiguous, but when Pete asks Stan to go get him some alcohol because he's been cut off by the carnival, I guess he's like the manager or the runner or something. There's regular alcohol, wood alcohol next to each other, and it's ambiguous, but my personal interpretation is that Stan chose the wood alcohol on purpose because he knew that Pete would drink copiously and that would kill him. So the next morning, poor Pete is basically dead. It's a heartbreaking scene. I absolutely love that character. He did not deserve the way he went, which is another reason why I love this movie so much, is you get invested in these characters and you don't actually get to spend that much time with them. They're just so well fleshed out. But anyway, we see Molly and Stan, they go and get married, and we have a flash forward to a couple years later, I want to say. Bradley Cooper has a terrible mustache now. Doesn't really look good on him. But they've basically taken the roles that Pete and Xena used to have. They're, well-to-do on the circuits, taking their show on the road. They make money. And basically he just cons people using his medium abilities, and she gives him the cues that were in the notebook. And one show he comes across Cate Blanchett, and he decides that he's going to kind of push further than what the show usually was, because all you see really is, like, people, "What object am I holding up? Don't look, he's wearing a blindfold," or whatever. "Tell me what object is in my hand," blah, blah, blah. And so he kind of goes further than that, and he starts to kind of go for insecurities that he can read in her. And this is uncool on so many levels, and Molly's like, "What the hell, man?" But he pushes too far, and he kind of gets involved with her and her very rich client, who is accompanied her to the show for whatever reason. I'm not really sure why psychologists would go out with patients, but whatever. So he kind of becomes fascinated by this woman because she oozes sexuality in a way that Molly never could. She's very much the femme fatale, and this is part of why audiences don't like this. It's a film noir. Film noirs are very uncommon these days. The last one that I can think of was LA Confidential. But this is noir to the T, and Cate Blanchett's character is like, she's a dangerous woman, you know she's dangerous, but she's also just arresting. You cannot not be gravitating toward her. Anyway, this causes problems between him and Molly. He becomes like further infatuated with this woman. He offers her to be in on the take because he's going to take on one of her wealthiest clients, and he's going to be using her case files to do it. And she's like, oh, sure, yeah, that's fine, dude, whatever. And so he gets involved with an incredibly dangerous man who is played by the guy from Cabin in the Woods. He was the main guy who wasn't eaten by the mermaid. I love that movie. As soon as I saw him, I'm like, oh shit. But he's absolutely chilling, and he's looking for. It seems at first like he's looking for closure on a girlfriend of his that had died a while ago after having an abortion because he knocked her up. And he starts seeing Stan after Stan kind of convinces this other rich couple that their son who had recently died was still with them and he loved them and his spirit was always near them and blah blah blah. And they buy it hook, line, and sinker, and because Stan has read the case files, he does basically the same trick on this guy, and the guy believes him. So he starts milking this guy's money. And there's this one, like, there's a scene at this point where, trigger warning, suicide, murder, by the way, there's a scene at this point where you just know it's the oh fuck moment, where you just know that our, protagonist, because he's not the hero, our protagonist Stan is way over his head and he has no idea. The old couple who missed their son, the woman is so happy because she knows that they're going to be together again, there's life after death. She kills her husband with a gun and then she shoots herself. And this is not really brought up except in like a radio broadcast later on in passing. And it's kind of like, oh no, this is not going to end well for old boy there. And it doesn't. He takes it to extreme lengths. He involves Molly. I'm not going to spoil the entire thing for you. But, yeah, it gets to the point where he has to go on the run for his life. And Molly's like, I'm not going with you this time. You have broken me in ways that, I cannot forgive. Cate Blanchett turns out to have been conning him the whole time. Surprise! And it's all revenge for him going after her that one night. And just that scene where she reveals this to him, oh god, is she on fire. This is amazing performance from her. As usual, Cate Blanchett is just incredible. I love her. Modern Hepburn. But yeah, I won't spoil the ending, but I mentioned the geek for a reason. Alright, so that was kind of long-winded, but yeah, I love this movie. I have loved this movie. I was lucky enough to see it on the big screen. I was one of 2 people in there, and just the entire time I was just riveted. Like, I could not look away. Towards the ending, I got this, like, sinking feeling in my stomach. I have not been that emotionally invested in a movie since probably Pan's Labyrinth. And like I said, like, I've seen thousands of movies. Like, I cry at the drop of a hat if I see something like Grave of the Fireflies and stuff like that. But after that, like, I can move on from it. I can think about it critically and be like, this is a sad movie, but there's more behind this. There's, layers and deep layers. And I look at it sort of, not objectively, but I can look at it in a more professional stance. This one got to me. And I found myself just kind of like thinking about it all the time. And that's rare for me, because it, like, I can look at it in a critical way, but I can also, like, this is a personal impact on me. I can talk about my feelings about this movie, and it just stays with me. And I've seen it twice since it hit streaming. I actually pre-ordered the Blu-ray, and I got an email from Amazon earlier today being like, hey, we said it'd come in April, but fuck you, it's coming in May. And that ruined my day. But anyway, so that's the 2021 version. It is 2.5 hours. the 1947 adaptation of the book, that one was closer to 90 minutes, I want to say. They had to condense a lot of the material. Like, it was also the Hays Code, so they couldn't really have that gut punch that Del Toro was able to give you. And, yeah, so the 1947 one, the storyline is not as extreme. A lot of it is implied because Hays Code, you have to be squeaky clean. And fuck the Hays Code. But, from the beginning you can see that Stan is a slimy, con artist git. And that was also Hays Code. You had to make sure that the audience knew that this was not a person to root for. He may be the protagonist, but he is a bad person. And he has to, by the end of the movie, get his in the end. He must be punished, and yeah, the Hays Code is a whole, stream I can do on my own. It's actually one of my areas of interest for research and just kind of writing about it, and in a socio-historical, cultural sense anyway. So, from the get-go that he's no good. Things don't go to the extremes as they do in the 2021 film, but you still have the psychologist, Lilith, who, if you are up and up on your biblical references, Lilith was the precursor to Eve. She's like the mother of sin and the misogynistic bullshit. But the psychologist is still she's the femme fatale. And it's just kind of either version of Stan. It's so cathartic to see her finally just fuck him over royally and not seeing it coming. But anyway, at the end, because there had to be a happy ending, it went past the ending of the 2021 one, and Molly comes back to Stan and she forgives him because he's learned his lesson, and Jesus Christ, everything had to have a happy end. And oh, I think I have a visitor. Put a pin in this.